everyone who's on the Zoom. I can't mute everyone here, so I'll ask for your cooperation with that part. You know, it is. This is. You know, Anita has been part of our community since 1974, and when I say part of our community, she has been the community in so many ways. From being a leader in our Hebrew school and working in the office there, finding her way down the hall eventually, and working in the office for many years with our community in so many different and beautiful ways. And her memory was such that she knew everybody. And for so many people, she was that connection, that bridge between everywhere else and CBI. So the idea of putting her in the ground is just so challenging. It is a blessing to see, you know, so many people on the internet here with us. You know, right now the number keeps going up. It's at almost 75 now, and I just also shared it to Facebook, so if anyone has any trouble getting on, there's another avenue there as well. So with those logistical pieces out of the way, it's just a blessing to be together. Now, in our tradition, in the Jewish tradition, we respond to death in the same way that we respond to life, with blessing. So I'll ask all of you to repeat after me: Baruch, Dayan, Ha'emet. So we say that God is the true judge, that God is the judge of truth. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehishem, Adonai Mevarach. Adonai has given, and Adonai has taken. Praise be the name of God. And this time is challenging, and we have so many emotions. Every one of us, whether on the screen or in this room, in this space outside, has so many memories of Anita. And they're almost exclusively positive memories. You know, from a vibrant sense of humor to kindness and compassion, to just being there to support all those around her. מזמור לדוד מיגון והולך משכון ברוך קודשך הולך תמימות והצדק ודבר מבוא. And we deserve to enter God's sanctuary, and we merit a place in the presence of God. We live with integrity, do what is right, speak the truth without deceit, have no slander upon your tongue, do no evil to others, honor those who are your God. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Never retract a promise once made. Lend no money at unfair rates. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own, and you shall stand firm forever. One second. You know, Anita was someone who lived those words. She truly lived with integrity. She was not filled with deceit. She brought honesty and integrity to everything that she did. And in Psalm 18 it says that with the loyal, God deals loyally, with the blameless, blamelessly, with the pure, purely, with the perverse, God is wily. God delivers lowly folk and makes humble those who are haughty. And with God's light, we can light up the darkness. With God, we can rush any barrier or scale any wall. El tamim darko imrat Adonai tzrofa magen kula kol avusim bo. The ways of God are perfect. The word of God is pure. God is a shield to all who seek refuge. And in Anita's life, she lived that way. She saw the holiness and the connection that can be made through our tradition. And as a devoted staff member, as a devoted volunteer, working with Sisterhood and Women's League and Hadassah, working with the synagogue and the St. Pete Fair International Programming, the JCC, she did so many small and large acts to bring us together as a community, to bring holiness into this world. I'm going to ask Cousin Schultz to lead us in the 23rd Psalm.
Adonai roi lo echzar bino deshe yorbitzeni al me menuchot yanaleni nakshi Yeshovev, Yancheni v'magle tzeret, Yancheni v'magle tzeret, leman shemo. Gam ki begets al mavet lo yara ki ata imadi shiftecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni tarof lefanai shulchan neged sorerai dishanta Hashem eroshi kosi revaya oktava chesed yilechuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti bebeit Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai roi lo echzar, Adonai roi lo echzar.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. I'm going to turn on the sound here, and I'm going to invite Rabbi Lesky to share some memories. Rabbi Lesky was privileged to know Anita for our entire time here, and hopefully you can see him.
Thank you, Rabbi Weintraub. Dear Lori, Norman, Dawn, Amanda, and Barbara, Anita's sister up in Maryland. Joanne joins me in extending our thoughts of condolence to you all on the passing of a good friend of Anita. And she was a good friend to so many. Especially in time of death, we say the words, Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, praised are you, a righteous judge. We affirm our trust in God, in the mysterious harmony of nature and the inspiring beauty of human relationships, even as we walk in the valley of deep shadows. We realize that there's no life without its tests, no dawn without its dusk, no sunshine without its clouds. But we also know that when life's burdens seem heavier than we can bear, we can experience a surge of inner strength from the resources with which God has endowed us for times such as these. Not only in nature, but also in men and women. When it is darkest, the stars come out. We gather today to bid farewell to one of those stars, to a wonderful woman, a good friend that we have all known. In a previous generation, it was common for a rabbi to extol the virtues of many as an Eshes Chayil, a woman of valor. And today, without hesitation, we can call Anita as we remember her, a true Eshes Chayil. She always spoke about coming from Maryland, even though she was born in New York, yet lived most of her life, the majority of her life, here in St. Petersburg since 1974, when she and Arlen came here and established themselves. I guess in today's news, she was a Tampa Bay Rays fan. All the way. She and Barbara, who's waving her hands beyond me, I see her, would share all those games and all that spirit. So that was another point of contact between Anita and myself. But more important, she was a mom, she was a grandma, she was a sister who cared very, very much for her family in spite of all the obstacles that may have been along the way. She was involved in her community as a friend, as a good neighbor, whether Brandeis, Menorah Manor, Hadassah, CBI. And at CBI, she did so much. She probably undertook projects that nobody else would undertake. If you remember in the old building on 59th Street, when we had the giant seating chart for the high holidays, who else would undertake organizing close to 1,000 people being seated in our sanctuary? And of course, with any good number, positively fetching at the results of their assignment. Yet she maneuvered and pleased and made everyone as happy as she could and accomplished that task, which seemed so quiet and for the rest of us who just showed up and davened. She did the same with the Book of Remembrance. And in the last many years with her partner, Lori, who producing the document so that every high holidays and every Yisker, we would have those who we love in front of us. She became the secretary of the PRTT of our Talmud Torah way back when. Not exactly sure how that happened, but boy, did she love those children. And when they reached bar and bat mitzvah age, she was always there because she was personally always invited to be a part of their celebration. And she was there to welcome them on Sunday, Tuesdays and Thursdays and Mondays and Wednesdays when it was 4 days a week way back when. She loved our children. And then coming to our front office as the first person that you met, always greeted with a smile, whether in person or on the phone, always welcoming and caring. She had a special relationship with my mother because they both shared the gift shops in their synagogues. She and Ellen running our Sisterhood Judaica shop for so many years, and so excited when we moved into our new building with a real, honest to goodness shop that the door that locked with windows where you could see their product. And if you all forgot to buy that wedding or bar mitzvah or baby gift and you needed it at the last minute, even though she was not there, she would drive down and help you out. She ran that place on behalf of Sisterhood along with Ellen in order to satisfy everyone's needs. She became Sisterhood president, no surprise. She became president of the Florida branch of Women's League, no surprise. She became a board member of the National Board of Women's League, no surprise. Always invited because she was willing to help, she was willing to step forward, she was willing to do. And how many dinners and lunches did she create the seating chart for? Wow. Who can remember all of those dinners and lunches throughout the years? She had a knack for numbers. I could call and say, Anita, I need a phone number for Laurie. Well, that's an easy one. But for anybody else in the congregation, and she had most of them memorized, she could just always give me the numbers and always was there ready to help. These are just some of the many, many, many memories that I have. But most important, over the last several years, when Laurie moved into the house as her roommate, her friend, her partner, and her daughter, and the good care that you took of your mom, Laurie, you can be very proud of that accomplishment because I know that she was most appreciative of your selflessness throughout all of these years. There's a quote from Hannah Senesh that I believe definitely describes our friend Anita Helfand. There are stars whose light reaches the earth only after they themselves have disintegrated and are no more. And there are people whose scintillating memory lights the world after they have passed from it. These lights which shine in the darkest night are those which illumine for us the path to the future. Again, Hamakom Yenachen Etchem, my condolences to you all, the family members, and our entire CBI community. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Rabbi. I appreciate your wisdom and your compassion. I'm going to put the camera back over here. Hamid Chacham Met. Mima Vilano Tmurato. There's no replacing a person of wisdom. Yesh la Kesef Motza. There are mines for silver and for gold, iron taken from the earth, copper from the rock. V'hachma, but wisdom, me'ayin timatza, where do we find it? V'eze makom binan, what is the place of understanding? Hamid hacham imet, mima vilano timorato, how can we find the replacement for a person, wisdom? Anita was a person of wisdom, a wisdom of compassion, a wisdom of humanity, a wisdom of personality. It wasn't only the numbers that she remembered, it was the faces, the stories, the partnerships. She knew who was ill and who was well. And like Joni, she made lots and lots of phone calls to check in on people and to be with people in their times of challenge and their time of blessing. Our tradition teaches that there is a season for everything. A time for planting and a time for reaping, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for love and even a time for hate, a time for embracing And right now we all know too well the time to refrain from embracing. A time for laughing and a time for weeping. A time for dancing and a time for wailing. A time for speaking, a time for silence. A time for birthing and a time for dying. A time for seeking and a time for losing. So I'm going to ask her granddaughter Amanda to come share a few words.
Everything I've experienced with Bubby can't be summarized with just words. So I don't really have much to share here today, but just some thoughts on who she was to me. My Bubby was always a strong woman. She had a loving heart and was never afraid to speak her mind. She always was there if I needed her for a hearty hug and would always laugh at a good joke. She's probably part of where I got my sense of humor. Most of my memories of Bubby circle around my birthday and holidays. She was always way too generous with presents, and I'm thankful for every single one. They brought me hours of joy and have been endlessly useful. She was always there for lovely birthday dinners alongside Papa and Aunt Lori, treating me to food at delicious restaurants. It was always fun and experiences I will always remember. I'll also remember her food and large gatherings. She would always prepare enormous dinners, and of course helped out by some guests bringing their own dishes. As many of you probably know, you would always feel welcome in her home, as she would never allow a guest to come in without offering a drink or food first. When it wasn't a meal in her home, it was a beautiful event at some great restaurant with as many friends and family as she could invite. I'm incredibly thankful to Bubby. I'm most thankful for the love and support she's always given me, and for raising the wonderful man who is my father. She's attended every graduation I've had, and as someone who's of course been through the standard school system, but started my education at one college, graduated and finished it at another, I've had quite a few. Always there with flowers, a lovely card, and a congratulations. Now I'm in grad school and I will miss her at my next graduation. I treasure the warm memories she has given me for the rest of my life. I love you, Bubby, and thank you for all you do.
As Rabbi Lusky mentioned, in this situation we speak of someone as an Eshet Chayil. Eshet Chayil me'em saracho me'bnei micha batak balev alav v'shalal bil yiksar u'malchuto lo ra kol le'ayecha kapa parshalani ve'adacha shilcha v'yom sheker achen ve'vel hayomim yishayirat Adonai Anita tenula mipriyadecha ve'alucha b'shachrim masecha. An Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor whose worth cannot be measured. With Arlen, she had a partner who put his confidence in her, and together they lacked nothing. She was good to him all the days of his life and hers. She opened her hand to the needy, extended her hand to the poor. She was clothed with splendor and strength. She opened her mouth with wisdom, and her tongue was guided by kindness. She was certainly never idle, overseeing the activities of her household and ours at the synagogue. We extol the fruit of her hand, and where people gather, we give deed. We speak of her deeds with great praise. I want to ask Lori to share a few words.
Thank you, Rabbi Weintraub, and thank you, Rabbi Lusky, just for speaking from the heart about my mom and how special she was. Anita Louise loved life. Every day was precious to my mom. she made the most of it. 7 years ago, she was diagnosed with a severe health condition. She was told she would probably have a year or 2 to live, maybe 3 if she was lucky. But I really believe her zest for life, her connection to people, her love for family and friends kept her going. She was one of the strongest women I know. She was generous and kind, but she was a powerhouse. I was blessed to have 2 of the warmest, most caring parents on the planet. I am glad they met more than 60 years ago. My dad was fixed up on a blind date for New Year's Eve with another woman. But he wasn't able to meet her before New Year's Eve. And he didn't want New Year's Eve to be a drag. So he asked his friend to fix him up with someone else. That someone else was my mom. They hit it off from their first date, which I think was at a bowling alley. They were quickly engaged and they had a great marriage for nearly 55 years until my dear father passed away in 2013. They were terrific parents and they were my biggest fans, whatever I was doing. When I was a starving artist in LA, a journalist here, and in my current career with the school system. I know they loved my brother Norman deeply. And I often heard them bragging about my adorable and brilliant niece, Amanda. Growing up, my dad didn't have much, but he was committed to making his life and our lives better. When we lived in Maryland, he sold watch parts and jewelry supplies during the day, and he moonlighted doing engraving at night. He was an excellent provider and made sure that me and Norman had everything we needed and virtually everything we wanted. In 1974, my dad bought a successful jewelry shop in St. Pete, and we moved here. My father, he was strong, he was gregarious, and he was warm. He loved to tell jokes to friends and strangers. And he told us he loved us every single day. My mom was a doer. She always held down the fort, making sure things were perfect at home. She did everything from being a Cub Scout den mother, to being a caring stage mom for me at dance recitals, and to being an ardent fan at my high school plays. She was involved in sisterhood at her synagogue, as you guys have mentioned, and I was her sidekick, hanging out with her and her friends in the synagogue kitchen. She continued her involvement when we came here, starting as a volunteer and eventually working at the synagogue religious school and main office. She was active in so many facets of Jewish life, and she was always working on a project on the kitchen table. As you have heard, she took a leadership role in the Book of Remembrance, one of many pet projects. She was committed to making sure that members could honor their loved ones the way they wanted to and the way they needed to. Many of the things that she took on would be a chore for other people, but she was driven by service to others. For those of you who know her well, you know she was also blessed with an amazing memory. She remembered people's names, their phone numbers, their zip codes, their family situation. She remembered dates, how much money she raised for this cause or that cause, and even what outfit she wore to her mother-in-law's birthday party 58 years ago. She was also a wealth of institutional knowledge. I relied on her so much for advice about my life, my work, and volunteer projects, many of which we did together. My mom had so much love to give. She opened her heart to everyone. I mean everyone. I witnessed it dozens of times. We would be at a restaurant or a doctor's office or practically anywhere. My mom would start a conversation with a virtual stranger. And in time, she'd have a new friend. She connected with people because she truly cared and was interested in them. I think each of her friends felt special. And many of them think of my mom like a mother or like a sister. As much as she loved everyone else, there was always more than enough love for me, my dad, and my brother. That is how big her heart was. She was my mom, my rock, my best friend. Peace be with you, Anita Louise. I love you.
Rabbi Dr. Hillel Bavli wrote, "This is my prayer to you, my God. Let not my spirit wither and shrivel in its thirst for you, and lose the dew with which you sprinkled it when I was young. May my heart be open to every broken soul, to orphan life, to every stumbler wandering unknown and groping in the shadow. Bless my eyes, purify me to see humanity's beauty rise in the world, and the glory of my people in its redeemed land, spreading its fragrance over all the earth. Deepen and broaden my senses to absorb a fresh, green, flowering world, to take from it the secret of blossoming in silence. Grant strength to yield first fine fruits, quintessence of my life, steeped in my very being without expectation of reward. And when my time comes, let me slip into the night, demanding nothing, God, of humanity or of you." That was Anita. She was someone who shared and loved and gave and taught. She didn't need much. She didn't expect much. She wanted to contribute in anything and everything. To her, there were no strangers, just new friends. Pirkei Avot wonders, Eza hu mechubad, who is respected, who is honored. Amechabed et habriot, the one who honors God's creation, the one who honors humanity. And that's what Anita did. She honored those around her. She respected those around her. She loved those around her. And in turn, that love was so reciprocated. I want to share some of my own memories. We were privileged to hear from Lori and Amanda, hear from Rabbi Levsky, sharing beautiful stories about Anita's life, how one blind date turned into a partnership of decades. Our love of Yiddishkeit led to a lifetime at CBI. Our kindness and friendship brought so much to those around her. In the time that I've known her, I feel such blessing. I saw her volunteer in so many different ways, from the Book of Remembrance, representing sisterhood at the board meetings, bringing Women's League to CBI and Torah Fund, and just so many incredible endeavors. But more important than any of the uncountable volunteer projects she has done at CBI since 1974 are the friendships she nurtured. She didn't believe in strangers. And yes, there are many people who have that gregarious spirit. Many people who have the gift of gab. But they don't all have the people skills that Anita had. For her, it wasn't just talking, it was listening. She was truly interested in people, and you could tell. She didn't just meet someone and then turn her back and go on. but gather people, live a lifetime with them, share friendships from one generation to the next. You know, when talking to Lori and Norm and Dawn the other day, I thought of the old story of Rav Chaim of Ramshisha, Lithuania. He was an itinerant rabbi going from place to place, sharing his wisdom, and according to legend, he was privileged to see heaven and hell. Not a journey so many rabbis go on. And in hell, he found people sitting at an absolutely gorgeous banquet. There were delicious foods right in front of them, but they were starving because their arms were locked. They couldn't bend them. In different variations, they have splints or other things, but they couldn't bend their arms, so they couldn't feed themselves. And they were given long spoons, but they couldn't reach to support themselves. So they're smelling this delicious banquet with no way of eating it. And then he found himself in heaven. And to his utter shock, the picture looked almost identical. There's this beautiful banquet and everyone's sitting at these long tables, but instead of starving, they're eating. What was the difference? They were feeding one another. They were helping one another. They were supporting one another. And that's who Anita was. If somebody needed help, she helped. If she couldn't do it, she'd find someone else to help. But she made sure that everyone had their needs. She was an Eshet Chayil, and whether that was in Brooklyn or Rockville, Maryland, or here in St. Pete, wherever she was, she shared and helped and loved. And Dawn told me about her enthusiasm for learning and teaching, that at the Pesach Seder it wasn't enough to tell the stories or kvel over her children and Amanda saying the Hebrew prayers, but she wanted to make sure that everyone understood the meaning. Norm and Lori spoke of how she taught them to respect others, to care for others, to be courteous, to run a household, to cook, crochet, sew, but most importantly, advocate for those who you love. She so deeply loved her husband, and Arlen would tell everyone how much he loved her. Their relationship was built on trust and respect over their nearly 55 years of marriage. They supported one another, they helped each other, and both of them worked for the good of the community. They were role models not only for their children, but for all of us, showing that devoted spirit could make such a difference. Now, in recent weeks, as Anita has been in and out of the hospital and tried rehab at Menorah Manor, I have seen so much care and concern for her. I've gotten calls from all across the community saying, can you say a Misha Berach for Anita? Can you say a blessing for her? At morning minyan and on Shabbat, her name was said not once, but sometimes many times. All wanted her to recover speedily, to return to the mitzvot, to the commandments, and the Gemilut Chasidim, the loving kindness that she was known for. And one of the things that Anita taught me was the power of those little details. She was absolutely meticulous in her care with the Book of Remembrance. She didn't want a small error to mess up the message of love that someone had written. From helping to address the high holiday tickets, remembering those zip codes, to setting places in the old synagogue or at one of our meals. There are so many things that she had done over the years. Co-chairing the Torah Fund events. She was so kind to invite me to share my stories of JGS, my colleague Rabbi Blatt's stories from Ziegler, and as Dawn said about her work in and for the gift shop, she couldn't put half herself in. She always put her whole self. That spirit was visible in her enthusiasm, as Rabbi Lefty mentioned, for the race. And whatever Olam Haba, the world to come, looks like, I'm sure she'll be watching the World Series tonight. Now, acknowledging all of her gifts, all of her work, all of her love would keep us here from now to eternity. Every single one of us is a story of her love and compassion, her spirit, her hard work, her devotion. And we acknowledge that she is now with her beloved Arlen, reunited with her parents and her brother Larry. And we know that Lori, Norm and Dawn, Amanda, her sister Barbara will miss her so deeply. But they are not the only ones who mourn today. All of B'nai Israel, all of Women's League, all of Sisterhood, all of Torah Fund, all the Hever Kadisha, all of Hadassah and the Menorah Manor Guilds, the St. Pete International Folk Fair, JCC. Everyone is mourning today. Her memory is a blessing. So tonight and tomorrow, I invite you to join us and share more stories at 6 o'clock. Tonight and tomorrow, and then Minyan continues at 6:30 each and every night. And you can say Kaddish with us. You can praise God's name in her memory. And yet that's not the end. I encourage you to share stories and memories with Lori and Norm and Dawn, Amanda, Barbara, in whatever way you wish. Send them an email, write them a letter, write a card in beautiful handwriting as she did. Call them, text them, share your stories. And don't just do that this week of Shiva, but in the months to come. If something reminds you of Anita, tell them. They'll appreciate it, and so will you. So I'm going to ask us to lower the cover, lower the casket. And then we'll do one of the most challenging mitzvot, which in this moment is slightly more complicated. We bury our dead. We all take part, and anyone that is here, we invite you to participate by taking right now a cupful of dirt and putting it on Anita's grave. So we will pause for just a few moments while we do that, and then we'll come back together for Al Malei Rachamim and Kaddish. Al Makoma Tavo V'Shalom. May Anita, may Chana Bela, Bar Hershel Shlomo V'Lea Gittel go into God in peace. And I just want to be clear that, some could see putting dirt on a grave as disrespectful, but that is the exact opposite. In the Jewish tradition, putting dirt on the grave is one of the most sacred things that we can do. Doing a mitzvah that is not reciprocated. Just as her work in the Hever Kadisha was not something she could ever imagine that those who she cared for would come back and help her. We pass this along from person to person, doing good in her name, just as she did for so many others. So we'll pause now for just a few moments, and I'll invite you to come forward. And just everyone, please be careful. It is uneven ground.
I don't like it. This one I go.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my God, I miss you, Joy. Oh.
Everything. I was gonna say, it's not the time to really say it.
He says everything is fine.
Yeah, and her chicken's delicious.
Okay, good. He said he enjoyed the chick for you. I dropped the one off.
Norman, that's one thing I really wish Norman. So.
You need any new vegetables?
This is a little free, huh?
No, not really.
Go to the second aisle.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at the right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from harm, guard your life, guarding your going and your coming now and forever. And it's said that it is a great blessing to pass away on Shabbat, to be on that holy day and to join the Holy One in that space. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God. May Anita's soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, God, to those who mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow, and let us say, Amen. If you are able to rise for El Malay Rachamim.
El Malay Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Hamse Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'malot kedoshim utarim kezor harakia mazirim et nishmat chanamela Baruch Shalom Avalei Gitel Shehalcha Leolama Be'aren Temenuchata Ana Harachamim Astireha Mesetek Enafecha Leolamim Utzror Bitzror HaChaim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן.
Those who are in mourning will join me to say Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash merava. V'yalma divrach tirutei v'yamlech malchutei. V'chayekon v'yomechon v'chayei tekol Beit Yisrael. V'agalav b'zman karim v'yimru. Amen. Yehesh merava.
Ishmei Rabba Mevorach, Ve'olam U'Almei Almayah.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmei Nekudsha B'rehu. Amin kol birchata v'shirata v'shbechata v'nechemata Ameran v'yalma v'yimru. Amen. Ye'esh amaraba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. V'aseh shalom v'ramav v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen.
Amen.
Hamakom Yenachem Etchem V'tok Avlei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. God is with us wherever and whenever we need. May God comfort you and all who have mourned for Zion and Jerusalem. And now in this moment, normally what I would do, I'm going to stop the Facebook, but what I would normally do is create two lines, surot, to allow you to pass through. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to turn on the gallery and I'm going to turn this so you see 4 screens of people. So if you're on the camera, if you're home, please wave and please send your love. So all these people are there to send you love and to show you support, and we'll be with you and we'll call you and take care of you. So thank you all for being here.